All right. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us. My name is Elise Bortolato, and I'm part of the Emerging Enterprise, a nonprofit business incubator here in Wilmington, Delaware. We're part of the Newcastle County Chamber of Commerce, and we're really excited today to be sitting down with Greg Plum, who is an industry expert, to discuss some of the top emerging technologies that businesses and individuals should be aware of, especially entrepreneurs who are thinking about fresh ideas or new ideas or how to maybe get into one of these emerging markets or technologies. So thank you for joining us today, Greg. I just wanted to tell those on the call kind of why we're here. So you were working with CompTIA or part of their committee to help kind of create this top 10 emerging technologies list. And for those on the call, if you haven't seen it, I have been sharing it in all of our posts. It's fascinating. I think it's really important for you guys to see what's coming up. And we're going to just talk about the top 10 or top 5, or what you think is the top 5 today, things that people should really be on the lookout for and what it means for their business and our world, actually. So I'll just let you jump in, Greg, and introduce yourself, and let's get started.
Sure. Great. Thanks, Elise. Always enjoy these sessions, so thanks for the opportunity. This one's a little bit different. What we've done in the past is really focus locally. This is more industry-wide, and as you mentioned, CompTIA has created. It's a nonprofit. It's really the world's leading IT organization out there, and they're involved with, most people know, especially in the IT space, know A+ certification. CompTIA is actually the governing body, if you will, the administrator, the owner of A+ certification, along with Security Plus, Network Plus, all the different these certs that are very highly esteemed in the IT space. So there's this community that I got involved with. On emerging technologies, and every year, and this was my first go round, so I was definitely the rookie on the squad, so I got to do the grunt work, which was kind of cool. It was fun to get to learn really what as a group we thought were the technologies to look at from a business development perspective, from a channel. So a lot of what I do is actually channel distribution. So I work with partnerships where MSPs, managed service providers, and different industry consultants take these solutions to their customers. And we're always for them to increase their wallet share, make a stickier customer, and frankly, become more well-rounded professionals in the tech space. So this community, I believe this is the 3rd year where they've come out with the list, the top 10 emerging technologies. The funny thing about it is it's not a science. It is much more of an art. And if you ask 10 people what they think are the top 10, you're going to get 10 different answers and 10 different ordering of the different technologies. It's really not important where they fall on the list. What's important is really just opening up the dialogue and getting people talking about what they feel is the most motivating technology today, and really how it can be monetized and can really help different organizations. So from the list this year, this group came up with, and I mean, it really is, it's a cast of characters that's involved with the community. It's a pretty small community. I believe there's 5 or 6 of us, but you have a representation from one person is from an AI company, Smith AI, which it's a virtual receptionist. The leader of the community is Mike Haynes, who's with Microsoft. He's been with Microsoft for a very long time. So it's definitely, you get a nice cross section of different companies, and you have some consultants in there as well. So I guess just stop beating around the bush, and I'll tell you the number 1 that came in. I'm going to work backwards. David Letterman would go from top.
Are you pulling right from their list of top 10? Or are these your top 5? Because you can almost like put your own little spin on what you think are the top 5 too.
I will. And actually, we are so close to being in 100% in sync. Let's start at 5. Okay, let's build a little bit of momentum here. All right. Okay. Well, actually, before we do that, let's even talk about what fell off of the list from last year. So 2 things fell off the list, and one of them was actually assigned to me to research to see if I felt it belonged on the list or not. And it was 3D printing, came off of the list. Basically because, yes, it's a great technology. Yes, it is continuing to evolve. However, it's hard to argue the fact that it's not become commoditized. When you can go to the store and buy a 3D printer and have one in your bedroom, it's really difficult to call that, in my opinion, and in the committee's opinion, an emerging technology. The other one that fell off the list might be a surprise, and this one always gets people talking. Drones came off the list. Again, massive market, tons of growth over the next 5 to 10 years. However, the technology again has become commoditized. When you can go on Amazon and pick up a drone for under $100, it's hard to call that something that's emerging. Certainly,
we actually have a drone school in the Emerging Enterprise Center. One of our incubator clients runs DWS Drone School here in Wilmington, Delaware, and with this pandemic, drones have been in the news a lot. So it doesn't mean that they're not an important part of businesses and how business can grow, but I kind of see how drones and both 3D printers could drop off that list, because even someone like me who's not a industry expert or in the emerging industries, I see that you can kind of pick them up anywhere or get them anywhere. It's not so new.
Right. It doesn't mean, to your point, Elise, it doesn't mean it's not important, but it's just no longer really considered emerging, right? It's there, it's arrived. Now, some of the others you're going to say, well, hasn't that arrived? So, I mean, we'll work up those. So those are two that fell off, which I thought was pretty interesting. Starting at number 5, we had biometrics. So what I like about biometrics is the fact that it's mostly used. We anticipate the bulk of it being used for security. Everybody hates passwords, right? We love to be secure, but we hate to remember passwords. This is another way. Biometrics is one of the technologies that's used to ensure security without having to actually enter passwords into everything.
So that's kind of, just for those on the call, it's like how the iPhone now can recognize your face. And I was kind of seeing in that description that CompTIA put out, it's what it could look like in the digital world and how we can use that. And I was seeing as I'm kind of seeing like, wow, what are we going to look like in 10 years if this becomes more prevalent and we do become more digital and we're walking around a world that can kind of pick up on our faces, and it's going to be interesting. So
it is thought-provoking at the very least. It can be a little bit scary, and when we get into these other technologies, that's where people start to go, oh, do we really want this? You just want to be careful, but we'll talk about that in a second. Next up is something that I'm sure the majority of the audience has not heard of. It's serverless computing. Think of it as being able to turn up and turn down to scale your needs, your compute needs instantaneously. So instead of buying all this compute power and just have it sit there idle and just use it when you need it. So when you do that, you obviously have to buy enough to handle your peaks. Serverless computing allows you to not do that. It's more of it's also kind of informally dubbed function as a service. So when you need something, when you need the resources, it's there instantaneously and you only pay. It's more of a throttled provisioning, and because of that, throttled cost. So think about somebody that has, Ticketron, when all of a sudden when tickets for an event go on sale, you have this huge peak, and then all of a sudden it's going to drop off as soon as it's sold out. So something like that can leverage this technology to keep costs. Costs are more variable, but it's more in line with what the business demands at that for that type of technology, for that type of transaction.
I was a website manager for almost 10 years, and when we would have a big article come out or some kind of big, because I was working in a theater, and so when something big came out, I actually would have to call our server company and say, hey, can you guys be on?
Ready.
I don't want to crash. Yeah, we definitely don't want to go down because tickets depend on it. So that's great to hear.
So and there's other terms out there that you may have heard, like elastic computing, which is kind of a subset of serverless computing. It's where that, it's elastic, right? It moves, it changes based on demand, which pretty interesting that actually made the top 5. And most people haven't heard of that, but I think you're going to be hearing a lot more of that in the coming months. I do know that Microsoft views that as one of the top driving technologies today and moving forward. Next, IoT, Internet of Things. I remember when I first heard that term, and it was probably 8 years ago, maybe. And I just thought it was goofy. I thought it was a silly term, Internet of Things, but obviously, you hear it enough, it becomes part of your vernacular. Massive potential. Predictions are by 2025, potentially 1 trillion connected devices. Now, what that means are, what is IoT? It's basically, think of sensors, right? Everything has sensors in it today. Those sensors collect data and they feed that data back to a warehouse. And then now big data, right? Big data is that's not part of our, it's definitely like an overlay or it's a byproduct of these technologies. The analysis and prediction using this data to analyze and predict future performance and behavior. So IoT is a real big one. I'm a huge fan of that. I mean, right now these sensors, they could be the size of a pen, they could be the size of a dimple in a golf ball. So you can just imagine what type of applications that could have. Wow. Off the charts. So that's a big one. That IoT is a really big one. Next up, number 2 is 5G. Now, we're all seeing the commercials. Okay, we're not there yet though, right? If you look at it, I'm not sure. I think there's just a couple of devices, just less than a handful of devices that actually can support 5G, and 5G hasn't even deployed fully. It's just coming. It's completely emerging. The application is just, we don't even know what that's going to ultimately impact. Think of, driver autonomous vehicles now being able to communicate with everything else around them. We're getting there, right? We're seeing a little bit of a glimmer of that right now, but it's going to become much more commonplace. And 5G is what's going to make that possible, because when you do that, you rely upon the network so heavily, you can't have there's zero margin for error. 5G is going to allow it to happen, and it's much quicker than what current 4G allows.
So just so understanding, so how is it going to allow it to happen? How is it going to I don't want to get too technical, but what is that big difference or that shift from 4G to 5G that's going to allow that network to be able to deal with all that?
At least you're asking the wrong guy.
Okay.
I can tell you it's going to be this. Yeah, I'm certainly not a technologist. I'm much more of an enthusiast. But it's about speed, right? It's about being able to handle many more points and feeds of data simultaneously and at exponentially faster speeds. So when you could do that, you're able to actually employ or invoke all these new services that we're really, right now we start to get bogged down a little bit. You know what it's like when your bandwidth chokes, right? If you're trying to be in a call and just your video freezes, or you can't get into a call, or your audio clips. That's painful. Well, think of that as if you're talking about an autonomous vehicle. You can't afford that. You can't afford any blips whatsoever. 5G is what's going to allow us to leverage these new technologies coming down the pike. And God only knows where they're going to go. It's going to be actually fun. We're in a great, exciting time. And depending on what you listen to, there was the Industrial Revolution where the steam engine had all these implications. We're talking, if you listen to real industry experts, they're saying that's all going to pale in comparison to what we have ahead of us. So pretty exciting time. Can I say number 1?
Yes, I'm excited.
Awesome. Yeah, number 1 is, to me, it's super exciting for a couple of reasons. Artificial intelligence came in as number 1. And what happened was over the last 3 years, it moved up steadily. I believe the first year we had this list, it was number 3, and then last year was number 2. This year is number 1. The reason why it came in as number 1 is really it's growing faster than any technology has to date. Think of the disruptive technologies we've had. We've had the internet, extremely disruptive. We've had smartphones, extremely disruptive. This is developing AI in its current incarnation. Now, various versions have existed, through the years, but the most recent translation, I guess, application of AI today really was introduced in 2012. Okay, that's not that long ago, and now it is ubiquitous. It is everywhere. So the pace of change of development, I think, is one thing that's super exciting. But beyond that, it's really a subset of what the greater artificial intelligence potential could be. So when we say AI today, we're really referring to narrow AI, or ANI. And that is very task specific. It's basically, it's not going to think, but you're teaching it, and it just uses data, right? The networks use data. Think of cancer lesion detection or looking at moles to see how many, to see how effective it can be at identifying these as cancerous or not. It's actually, studies have shown that artificial intelligence has been more effective than humans in doing this. I mean, it stands to reason, because once you feed it, the more data points you can give it, you're going to be able to feed a network infinitely more data points than you can a human. So theoretically, these systems get smarter than humans at very narrow tasks. So it's not about, they're not thinking yet, but they're applying this knowledge, or this, it's knowledge really. They're applying the experience and the data points effectively, more effectively than a human. The cool thing to me, I think, was super motivating is where you go from there. When you say AI, or especially if you had said artificial intelligence 5-10 years ago, you're thinking about the stuff of Hollywood, right? You're thinking of, which is trying to think of. Exactly right. And that is known as general artificial intelligence, so AGI. Now, will we get there? Probably at some point. I don't know. I'm just speculating. It just depends on who you ask. There are two camps. One says, and there are three main players in the space right now, and they're all funded by the big boys. You know them, right? It's the Googles of the world, the Facebooks of the world. There are two schools of thought, and even Elon Musk was involved with one of them. I believe it was OpenAI, and has stepped down because it scared him. He's famously been quoted as saying, "We have no idea this could unleash the beast." And I think that's pretty interesting when his technology actually is going to make heavy use of AI, these autonomous vehicles as well. But it's just interesting to see what we're doing right now is feeding not just what we're doing, and it's incredibly, it's really changing the way we're doing business, but it feeds into something much greater, this general artificial intelligence, which who knows, who knows what that's going to bring. So to me, that's pretty exciting.
You said like AI kind of came on the list in 2012, correct? And it's really grown up, but it's been part of our culture for so many years, going back to kind of what you said in Hollywood. Really, AI has been part of sci-fi movies since, I think, even before it's been a long time. I think about all of the different AI, and then even in those movies, it's like, oh, these androids are taking over. They're colonizing the humans. So it's become always part of this like science fiction, but now it's become part of our reality, and how we're going to use it and what it's going to look like for businesses and our world is interesting.
It is, and it's one of those things. I don't know if there was a quote from Twitter. I think Jack Dorsey said this 10 years ago, and they said, well, what's Twitter going to become? He said, we have no idea, because it's basically a platform. I mean, AI is a platform. It's a technology. The universe uses it based on what they need. So we're not even sure what it's going to turn into. Twitter, Lord knows it's still here, and it's certainly morphed and evolved. The interesting thing is, as you get newer generations, right, the knowledge workers that are coming into the workforce now have a whole different perspective, a whole different mindset than I certainly have, and even the generation that's after me. So to me, that's where the excitement comes. They're taking this raw technology and thinking of innovative ways of deploying it, and that, who knows where it's going to go. All I can say is it's definitely a fun time to be in this space. Because all these technologies, we've mentioned 5 here. You can see they're interwoven, right? They start to play together, and then
too.
Absolutely, they leverage each other. They don't necessarily exist. They can't really exist in a vacuum, all of them. So that's, to me, that's the exciting part. And yeah, it's gonna be a fun time.
Well, it's kind of when I was looking at the list and I saw 5G, and for me, I think 5G, I think 4G, I think my cell phone. But when I saw autonomous cars, or some of the technologies that's really going to change our world. Like, I mean, our world is going to look different with these technologies, not just our businesses, not just our data. Like, I mean, I feel like how we live our life is going to change. And I felt like, wow, so 5G it's not about my phone. It's really about all of these other technologies that's kind of going to change how we do our day-to-day things, how we start living, how we start thinking about the world. And going back to your point on, what it's going to look like in the future and these next generations that are coming. I was just reading an article about these, I think it was first graders. They were kind of given, I believe it was like a phone, and the person gave it, thought like they'd be playing with the box or just kind of doing fun activities. And he said that within 5 days, they were working with 27 different apps and taught themselves. No one touched anything. They taught themselves everything, and they were even like hacking some of the things. And so I feel like our next generation, our younger generations are going to completely blow this list out of the water and change how we see life, because they've grown up with such advanced technology compared to me with my dial-up internet.
Well, and the funny thing, it's true, because to them, it is the norm. They have no idea what it was like before the internet. They don't, the iPhone came out in 2007. That's a long time ago. So the kids that were born, iPhone was already around. They're going to be entering the workforce with a whole different perspective, a whole different expectation than what we had. So that expectation is going to drive the continued innovation. And like I said, I think it's exciting. It's a really, really fun time. And if I can, I'd love to make a real quick plug.
Yeah.
So just recently, I made a shift professionally to a company called Mobile Solutions. It's a managed mobility company out of Denver. And what I loved about this list, and what I love about that opportunity, is it leverages all of these technologies, 5G, so mobility. We are truly in a mobile first world. You can't say we're not. You can live probably without your laptop, but can you live without this? My guess is probably not. So being in a mobile first world, and mobility these days is not just a cell phone. It is your laptops, it's your tablets, it's your IoT devices, everything out there. And it's kind of fun being involved in an industry right now where this is basically, it's an overlay to manage that and secure it. Security is huge right now, especially that the free world is now working from their living room. So it's a pretty exciting time all around.
It is. And I thought that list was really interesting. I think, for businesses, do you see that there's any industry, as you were kind of building this list, as you were learning along with that list? I'm sure there was a lot of learning that you had on this committee, and kind of hearing from experts in this field, or working on these emerging technologies. Did you see like, hey, businesses should kind of be on the lookout for how this will affect certain industries or affect certain businesses? Did you notice anything?
I guess what I noticed was not much of a surprise to me, but it really cuts across all industry. And not only that, it affects the solopreneur on up to, the Fortune 100. So the interesting thing is these technologies are kind of democratizing, if you will. It really basically gives somebody that is working out of their basement access to the same types of tools that somebody that's in the ivory tower at a Fortune 100 company has. So to me, that's exciting. It almost levels that playing field, giving the little guy, and we know small business drives America, right? There's no doubt about that. That to me is the exciting part, because it doesn't favor any one industry, any one vertical, any one size of company.
Well, I feel like a lot of our leaders in the industry today started in their garage. So
absolutely.
Yeah, so I feel like this is a moment for entrepreneurs and startups, and understanding these lists or understanding these technologies and how they can capitalize on them, or be part of what happens next with them is really exciting. And I feel like why we had to have this conversation with you, when I listened to your talk with CompTIA, I was like, we have to bring this to our Delaware businesses and make sure they're aware of what's on the horizon, what they should be looking out for, how they should be thinking about incorporating, what's next, instead of just, I think sometimes we're all so busy at dealing with today that we're not positioning our businesses and for the future, and these entrepreneurs, how we can position themselves for the future, because today's technology will no longer be the leaders of tomorrow. So I think it's really important that we're having this discussion with you. And I just wanted to know, what you felt coming out of this conversation. was probably the most important advice or takeaway you can give to those businesses that are trying to, position themselves for the future, think about how they can evolve as best to their ability?
Well, you've already alluded to the fact that there's already a drone component to what you do, right? There's a piece of that. Drones were an emerging technology a few years back. Think of it this way: those that paid attention to it and leveraged it and focused on it, it's turned into a business model. Yeah. Same thing's going to happen here. The exact same thing. So by focusing on this, and you're so right, people get stuck in the weeds, right? We're so busy working in our business that we don't step out and think more strategically. That would be, to me, the smartest thing you can do. And pull in outside resources. Have your, that's what boards are for, and that's what that's why you're trying to get these different perspectives, so you can have somebody from outside the industry sharing basically, where to go, where to direct your company. But any one of these things, I would say pay attention to them, because whatever you're doing today, you will be able to leverage. Even what's not on here, it's further down, is robotics, robotic process automation, RPA. That is one right now where you can take very, very repetitive tasks, automate them. Chatbots right there, it's an example. Very simple, and that uses several of these technologies, where you can take the repetitive tasks off of a human and put that on an automated platform, and then that human can be deployed on something more strategic and maybe more meaningful and exciting for them. So I just pay attention to the list. It's going to morph, right? It will change. This is certainly not in stone by any stretch of the imagination, but it is certainly, these are all things that should be really taken into account, especially, and if you're in sales, right? If you're in technology, which is my passion, these guys are out, these consultants and experts, managed service providers that are supporting customers, know what's coming down the pike. Be that strategic advisor, so you can take the burden off of them. If you bring that to them, they're going to be the stickiest customer you're ever going to have.
Well, which is why you're here, and I feel like you're bringing kind of that knowledge to our members, to our community, and to our startups and entrepreneurs that we work with, because I really think it's important that we are just making sure that we're giving the information of what's coming down the pipe. So I even know that Microsoft made the news recently by using AI to, unfortunately, maybe make their editorial staff a little smaller, because they're using editorial duties with AI. And I feel like that's going to be in the news more too, as industries start using this technology to streamline or improve their, like you said, their business, to take those repetitive tasks, unfortunately, of people. But that doesn't mean that there's not other ways that we as individuals can kind of position ourselves in the new market that's going to become. So.
Well, that's a great point. The responsibility really is on it's always been that way. The responsibility is on the individual. Continue to stay, to continue to stay relevant, you need to stay up on the changing landscape, right? It's going to change. I mean, here's the one, and I'll probably irritate somebody by saying this, but the one that struck me most recently, with COVID, is the toll booths. Right? Did you notice, when you started traveling, all of a sudden the toll booths were empty, and they would have, was it toll by tag or whatever they call it? So they basically
Easy Pass
snapshot. No, not even. Yeah. So I always
go by Easy Pass. So.
Right, but no, there was something that those that don't have Easy Pass, they would go through anyway, and it was, I think it was toll by plate or something like that. So it was basically reading your plate and never going to send you a bill for the toll, thus eliminating the need to have that toll booth operator. Now, I know, and I've had this discussion with other people, and they say, yes, but that is a whole ecosystem. I understand, but I can't help but think that those resources that are deployed in that capacity can't be redeployed in another capacity that might even be a higher and better use of their time and more rewarding. Certainly a cost savings for the state. because, you know, all of a sudden that's now an automated process. Anyway, that's just an example of the resources of the workforce needs to stay relevant, stay on top. So it's not just the companies that need to, you know, pay attention to these technologies. As a worker, as a knowledge worker, you want to stay on top of this as well to keep yourself as relevant as possible.
Well, I mean, yesterday, so with the rain that we had on Friday, I have to unfortunately have some roof work done. And I had a roofer come out yesterday, and he had an app that just went over my house through Google Maps. I guess it was and they just immediately took all of the dimensions of our entire roof, how much square foot they would need for roofing to help them with their proposal. Took 2 seconds. And then he also had a drone on site to just kind of go look for the issues. I mean, this is just another, it's a small business, a roofing business that's using technology to make their workload easier, more efficient, more accurate.
And safer if you think about it.
I have to have a man up on the roof kind of taking all the measurements. So I think it's interesting how I just want the Delaware market to see, like, there are things, technologies out there that will improve your business, and then also things you can think about, you know, like, I know drones have fallen off the list, but, you know, thinking about how you can use, you know, bots and communication bots to kind of help with your customer service responsiveness. And not everything has to be scary. It can really be helping the community improve their business through these technologies and making your responsiveness to your customer, you know, make that high touch.
You're right. And when you mention bots, I think it's important to note one thing that came out of this conversation, which I think was pretty good with, her name's Maddie Martin. She works for, she's on this committee as well, and she works for Smith AI, and it's basically a virtual receptionist. And I think she made a really, really good point that I never even thought of. It's essentially, it's not even trying to hide the fact that you're using bots. It's being completely transparent and say, you know, to your customer, here's how we address these needs, and here's the reason. People are generally would rather get an instantaneous answer from a bot than wait for 10 or 15 minutes to talk to a live person. That's just, I mean, I know I would. Yeah, nobody likes waiting on hold.
Especially if it's an easy question, you know, just one of those, I just need an instant question that I can't find on your website. I just need an answer. And that'll help me make a decision if I even want to continue discussing anything with you. So
exactly right.
Yeah, I don't always love, automation can be great when done well.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Oh, and it's awful when it's done poorly. It's painful.
Yes.
Absolutely. Agreed.
So I honestly, I think my goal today was just making sure that the community knew what that list looked like, get your opinion on how companies can be using or thinking about this new technology, and it's here. So I feel like they have to start really thinking about it now.
Well, you know, the jobs that are really popular today, and it's all, look, this is all about driving the ecosystem, right? The technology is kind of the driver, but the byproduct is employment, opportunity, you know, contributing to the welfare of the ecosystem. Jobs that exist today that are really popular and prevalent today didn't exist 5 years ago. Same thing's going to happen, right? History repeats itself. Absolutely, it's going to be the same thing. So stay relevant. And Delaware, I love Delaware. Delaware has they've taken such a forward stance in really educating the masses and providing tools and programs to educate people that either are coming out of school, maybe they weren't really meant for school, they weren't interested and motivated in it. However, they had a propensity for technology, right? Maybe they were gamers, or maybe they had a server in their closet in their bedroom. There are programs now, and CompTIA has many programs like that as well. We have local ones. You know, Tech Impact is one with their IT Works program. It's a nonprofit, local nonprofit, and then actually spans beyond local now. And then there is Zip Code Wilmington that educates people and gives them the skill set, either starting out in a career or maybe a second career. Maybe they've decided, you know what, I see these technologies, I feel like I could really make a difference. Skilling them up and then being able to redeploy in the workforce in these newer technology fields.
Yeah, actually, and one of our, at the Emerging Enterprise Center, one of our incubator clients who has done amazing things in Delaware is Code Differently. So Code Differently educates, K through 12 and then postgraduate individuals on coding and technology and, really supplementing, complementing that knowledge. So I think it's really great. So we here at the EEC, we have a lot of technology companies who are working with data or coding or, like I said, drones. So there's a lot of great businesses out there, working in the community to improve, where our future of technology goes here in Delaware.
It's a pretty innovative space. Our community is very, very innovative, very forward thinking. You just need to know which rocks to overturn.
Exactly. And for those on the call who, might want to follow up with you after this and either get more information about the list or just kind of, connect with you as you kind of
Absolutely.
learn more and grow, where would they find you?
I am a LinkedIn junkie. So you can find me on LinkedIn, Greg Plum, just GregPlum. Or you can get me on email. My email is greg.plum@mobilesolutions.net, .net, not .com, and would welcome the opportunity to connect. Absolutely.
Are you okay with me sharing that out in?
Of course.
I'll put that in the comments section too of our post today for those who are watching and want to just make sure they're connected with you on your social platforms and just kind of stay up to date on what's going on, because I feel like a lot of companies just can learn from what you're learning. So I feel like it's great.
Well, we're always, even on the committee, we were all of us were sitting there learning together, and that's the fun part. To me, when you're learning, it is exciting. It keeps it interesting, and everybody, even those old dogs that have been on these committees and have been involved in the community, the ecosystem for a long time, they're continuing to learn. So that's the beautiful part about it, really.
All right, wonderful. Well, thank you so much for talking to us today, and thank you for sharing this your top 5 list from the top 10 at Coptiva. I think it was a great list. I think it's good for our businesses to know, and we're looking forward to having you again. I'm sure we'll be chatting further in some form as we
love it.
Yes, as we work together. So have a great day, and thank you everyone who has joined us. And I will be sharing Greg's information in the comment section, so make sure to connect with him as well. All right, thanks, Greg.
Thanks, Elise. All right, take care. Bye-bye.